is my fellow free Muslim solvent thinkers L3's news podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida, and today's date is Thursday, November 17th, 2016. Yeah, so it's early Thursday morning. I'm in Sunrise, Florida for the time being, in the quiet areas of Markham Park. Nice big facility, plus good campgrounds. So had to like chill for a couple of days, and it's well worth it. Got some things I achieved personally, so we're gonna work out. It's gonna take some time, but you know what? It will build. So I got faith, and I'd like to talk about a little chit chat about what happened Sunday at the anti-Trump rally that happened in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and it was pretty decent overall. And one thing I noticed is always in good faith, I was pretty critical on my show, like my narrations when they all want to just go after Trump this, Trump that, and he's a sexist, he's a racist. It's the same old song and dance. And you're not talking to a person that is a Trump supporter either. I know many of you have me say it multiple times, and you're gonna tell me, Craig, please shut up. That's okay. However, when I went in, had my little talk with a lot of the rallies and so forth, I see some, folks out there a little bit edgy, but many of them were great. I had a little chat. They have say what they had to say in their intake without even crucifying them. So, but I always repeatedly asked them about, made a comment, says, no worries, we have the 10th Amendment. And they liked that. And I gave them some examples of what happened, including medical marijuana that got passed, and they were, you're correct. So instead of getting all that anger and frustration to go on this anti-Trump fetish, you give them solutions on how to pursue and even create gridlock within the states if he signs a bill which is considered unconstitutional. And it was funny because a couple of people allegedly tried to call me out, trying to bust my chops a little bit, but I thought I was like part of some elite. But I let them know. I said, look, I'm Loki Luck the Third. They call me Loki Luck the Third. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and all that. Speaker, iHeartRadio. Because this happened during my live feed, so had to refute it and let them know that hey, I wasn't hired, never hired to be here. And it's funny, the one guy, he's like a videographer. He was like taking photos of me close up, and I actually blew him a kiss. So if he's listening, let me know how it came out. I'm not here to condemn you, but talk to me. That's all you gotta do. If you see me next time, off time, let's have a one-on-one chat in good faith, because you never know. We may have a lot in common, even if it has disagreements, but common interest. And I say that again out of fidelity. But one funny thing about it was members of the Broward Sheriff's Office was taking photographs of all the protesters, and I noticed that. And I may have took a photo of one of them, and even one of the other individuals that called me out, well, not the non-videographer, of course, thanked me for being out here. So I stood my ground, and we had a good little conversation. And hey, hopefully I'll see you again, and we could mingle a lot more. All right, but it was like I said, I had my differences, but it was still good to hear the other side. And of course, as one incident broke out, a couple of Trump supporters with their big tapestry, and they were trying to march along the sidewalks, and they were getting harassed by some of the folks. And one of them actually went up to their faces and started screaming at the top of her lungs and threw water at them, and the police took her in. And of course, if you've seen it, it's all over Twitter. And just have to say, what I witnessed, she made a mistake. She let passion supersede logic. not condemning her, but she chose poorly. I even had a little conversation with those two Trump supporters, and they were very gentlemanly, and they thanked me for letting them speak their side of the story, their own viewpoints, and that's what I do. I'm open and share information, ask questions, and you know what? I gotta say it was good overall. But whatever you folks do, try not to let this. Don't beat your heads into a wall because, like I said before, in the past, Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee has done this to themselves. And don't get me wrong, the GOP is in extreme turmoil as well. So stay vigilant, and remember, you want to create a foundation. You have to plant a seed, not an old alien tree. In other words, start local, not a federal. All right, but enough of that. Speaking of Donald Trump, this been interesting controversies happening with this man and some of the people he's tried to like quote unquote hire. So Kurt Nemo came out, November 16th. Kurt Nemo, if you knew him from Infowars, he does a good job. He's with Newsbuds. And he has one here that says Donald Trump cabinet establishment insiders and neocons. It says here on Sunday, the New York Times published a list of potential Trump administration cabinet picks. All of candidates are established insiders and neocons left over from the Bush administration. Over the weekend, the Trump transition team announced Reince Priebus as White House Chief of Staff. Priebus is about as establishment as it gets. The chairman of the Republican National Committee previously served as RNC General Counsel and is a former chairman of the Republican Party of Wisconsin, where he brought nationally known figures such as Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House, Scott Walker, Governor of Wisconsin, to a national prominence. Priebus is responsible for taming Wisconsin's Tea Party and merging it with the Republican Party. Taming, conformed. Tea Partiers, Wisconsin Tea Partiers, be a bunch of goody two shoes. You are my bell patrons. Bing, bing, bing. Yes, master. What can I do for you, Master Previous? I'm being sarcastic, but you folks can understand. The pick signals that Trump may look to build bridges in Washington and keep the continuity with long-term Republican agendas as opposed to make waves from the beginning, reports CNN. Long-time Republican agendas include the never-ending war on manufactured terror, ongoing wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria, and a police surveillance state at home. The Trump team, headed up by Vice President Mike Pence, also announced as Stephen Bannon as chief strategist and senior advisor. Bannon is an executive chairman of the alt-right news outlet Breitbart News. He heads up the group Government Accountability with Peter Schreiber, a former William J. Casey Research Fellow at Stanford University's Hoover Institution. Casey was Reagan's director at the CIA. Hey, 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 right? He played a key role in Army in Afghan Mujahideen that would later become Al Qaeda and the Taliban. He was a central figure in the Iran Contra scandal. Whoa, interesting. I gotta send this to a good friend of mine. He'll be like, what the hell? Exactly. After earning a master's degree in national security studies from Georgetown University, Bannon served as an assistant in the Pentagon. He worked for Goldman Sachs. Even Wikipedia talks about this too, all right? He used his experience in the entertainment industry to produce political propaganda, including the films The Face of Evil, Border War, Battle for America, and the Sarah Palin documentary, The Undefeated. There are a number of people under consideration for Secretary of State. Most notable on the list is John Bolton, George Bush's combative recess appointed ambassador to the United Nations. He is now a senior fellow of the American Enterprise Institute, the neocon think tank responsible for drumming up support for Bush's illegal invasion of Iraq. He is also involved with the Jewish Institution for the National Security Affairs, the Council for National Policy, the Gatestone Institute, an organization at the forefront of anti Muslim propaganda. He is a former board member of the Project for the New American Century, another neocon organization that pushed for the 2003 invasion of Iraq. And some could considered Bolton part of the Jewish criminal network. And I will say that respectfully because I use that in detail, not as the Jews collectively. Okay, so just to bring that to light. In the 1980s, prior to his recess ambassador appointment, Bolton had held a post of at USAID before joining a team of Federalist Society lawyers under Reagan Attorney General Edwin Mezzi. Eva Gorlinger notes USAID is the principal entity that promotes the economic and strategic interests of the U.S. across the globe as part of the counterinsurgency operations. In March, Bolton penned up an op-ed for the New York Times calling for the bombing Iran. The United States could do a thorough job of destruction, but Israel alone can do what's necessary. Such action should be combined with vigorous American support for Iran's opposition aimed at regime change in Tehran, he wrote. Other candidates for the Secretary of State include Bob Corker, Newt Gingrich, Somali Khalilzad, and Stanley A. McChrystal, the former senior military commander in Afghanistan. Khalilzad is a staunch neocon. He served as an ambassador to Afghanistan and the United Nations during the Bush administration. He is now a board member of the National Endowment for Democracy, a congressionally funded organization that does what the CIA did in the 1950s through the 1990s overthrow governments. NED was established to create a soft side image for CIA fronts. It works with you said. Trump is looking at Stephen J. Hadley to possibly become defense secretary. Hadley was Bush's national security advisor. He was at the center of the neocon coterie that dominated foreign policy and played an instrumental role in pushing a series of bogus claims about Iraq and Saddam Hussein. He said Mohammed Atta met with Iraqi intelligence agent Ahmad Khalili Ibrahim Samir al-Anani, al-Ani, in the Czech Republic several months before the 9/11 attack, a claim later debunked as war propaganda. In 2009, he was elected to sit in the board of mega military contractor Raytheon. Trump is also looking at Kelly Ayotte, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, the former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, Lieutenant General Michael T. Flynn, Arizona's Senator John Kyle, and Alabama's Jeff Sessions for Secretary of Defense. Sessions may also head up to the Department of Homeland Security. He is interested in keeping the wars going and voted twice against redeploying troops out of Iraq. He voted against investigating awards to contractors in Iraq and Afghanistan. Military contractors have defrauded the U.S. government for more than $1 trillion. Representative Michael McCaul, the chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, is also being considered. McCaul has sponsored a number of war on terror related bills, including H.R. 5471, the Countering Terrorist Radicalization Act. There's links on here too. You can check it out yourselves, folks. The legislation further integrates the federal government and state and local law enforcement operations and create a new counterterrorism advisory board in the federal government. He also supported H.R. 159, condemning the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran for the 1988 massacre of political prisoners and calling for justice for the victims. The bill supported the Majideen el-Khalik, or MEC, an Iranian Marxist political organization. MEC was considered a terrorist organization by the European Union until 2009 and by Canada and the United States until 2012. The Islamo-Stateless terrorist occult group is supported by the neocons, including Max Boot and the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, and an Israeli lobbying group. Jose Rodriguez, a primary architect of Bush's illegal torture program, is being considered to head up the CIA. Rodriguez, the former director of the National Clandestine Service, helped develop the CIA black sites, secret prisons operated in foreign countries where integrators used a range of torture tactics, including the use of waterboarding, the simulated drowning technique once used by the Khmer Rouge and Nazi agents to glean information for detainees, writes Li Fang for The Intercept. Rodriguez also played a key role in the destruction of CIA videotapes documenting the torture of Khalid Shaikh Mohammed. Rodriguez was CIA station chief in Panama, Mexico, and the Dominican Republic, and ultimately director of the Latin American division. The track record of the CIA in Latin America is well known. Trump targeted the Iran nuclear deal framework during his campaign. His advisors were also hinted President Trump will recognize Jerusalem as a Jewish state's capital and move the U.S. embassy there. It was a campaign promise, and there is every intention to keep it. Trump's Mideast advisor, David Friedman, told the Jerusalem Post, "We are going to see a very different relationship between America and Israel in a positive way. The Israeli right is using Trump's promise to recognize the Jerusalem Embassy Act, which mandated the embassy be moved by May 31st, 1999, as covers to expand illegal settlements in Palestinian-occupied territory. The selection of government insiders and neocons discredits Trump's claim he is anti-establishment and opposed to U.S. intervention in the Middle East. His choices for Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, and Homeland Security demonstrate the Trump administration will more or less pick where Bush and Obama left off. What is that saying, my friends? The more things change, the more it stays the same. Yeah, man. Not surprising at all. And it's a shame if this goes through. So everyone out there that were diehard Trump supporters and don't like what his candidates are, you are entitled, like everyone else, to say hell no. Plain and simple. And it's fun because many folks out there assume that I was a Trump supporter and all that. But, like I always tell folks, yes, he won, but you can't sit down or sit back. And just one of those things that boggles the mind. But remember, friends, some people have their says here, and even though some people may be critical, some people like, wow. But there was talk about this for a good period of time. So, like I tell everyone, you gotta take the initiative and let them know. Don't bring these neocons in here, because even Congressman Paul said it himself. He cannot do this. If he does, then the status quo will pursue. And that old saying, the more things change, the more it stays the same. That's why I always tell folks, never look at these presidential candidates or political candidates by any means as your Lord and saviors. They are considered elected servants when they get in. They work for us regardless. Put their feet to the confounded fire, including Donald J. Trump. I believe his middle name is John. You gotta make a decision, my friends. So I will proceed. This one here came from New Eastern Outlook by Jim Dean. It says here, U.S. hit the reset button with Russia now? And as it reads here, the first thought that popped into my head after the political nuclear bomb went off in the U.S. on election night with Trump taking the presidency was, where do we go from here? As with all newly elected presidents, what they promise on the campaign trail and what they do after they win is often a legacy of broken promises. Trump skillfully manipulated massive free media coverage during the first half of the campaign by making provocative policy statements to openly separate himself from the Republican pack. The bedrock of his early campaign was, I'm not one of them, and it was successful from the start. Trump pulled an audience so ratings hungry media rode him for their own benefit, never expecting that he had any chance of winning. Many waited for him to crash and burn, which he did a few times, but like a phoenix, rose from the ashes of his past. With a large field of primary opponents, Trump sucked up so much of the media oxygen that he literally starved the others out to the point where they were all viewed as the establishment that Trump was running against. He offered himself to the public as a battering ram to get them some payback revenge for years of humiliating treatment as an elite political class. I first saw how effective the campaign was when the Trump expenses for winning the primary vote was running at the same low levels at Bernie's tight budget. While he was whining despite being outspent by the professional Republicans, it seemed hard to believe watching it all. One of the earliest provocative foreign policy statements Trump made was an opposition against the U.S. using Russia as a punching bag for NATO. That elicited a quick response from Putin that Trump's views were a breath of fresh air on the American political scene. Trump's campaign opponent fired back at him for being a Russian lover, a play on a Cold War smear. But did it did not stick because Trump kept making more provocative statements, which the press focused on, and the follow up attacks on what he had said the week before never caught an audience. Trump became a constantly moving target to the frustration of those wanting to shoot him down politically. Fast forward to the days after the election with protest marches and many anti-Trump riots in some cities. All out of all that chaos comes former Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel putting the Russia issue right back on the table for Trump by stating that the complete reset of America's relations with Russia is needed, And he went further by saying it had to be done with a man-to-man between Trump and Putin. Hagel is no stranger to bruising political battles. Powerful independents serving the people's interests directly are usually hated by both parties. Hagel was savage during his congressional hearings and then later by Obama staff since as Secretary of Defense he competed with them concerning strategy and the best use of the U.S. military. He described Susan Rice's wanting to conduct 4-hour meetings with endless detailed inquiries where meeting attendance would balloon to several dozen people, which is where the leaks usually come from. Hagel always preferred small meetings focused on the big topics, and hence his jumping out in front of after the election with his hard-earned advice to both leaders, one old and one new old one and new one. Trump and Putin have had their own first post-election phone call coming after the congratulation letter from Putin that Trump described as beautiful, which is not a term used in describing diplomatic correspondence. Trump did not tell us why, but we know he used the word to make a point that the Russian bear hype flag would no longer be flying on the White House pole when Obama left. Their discussion topics were meat and potatoes, uniting efforts in the fight the with the number one enemy, international terrorism and extremism, and the term constructive cooperation was used. The opposite of Russian bashing is the kind of language that has the pro-sanctions Europeans worried. The EU press was openly discussing how hard it would be for the anti-Russian factions to hold the line on sanctions if Trump were to turn the U.S. boat around, despite the hurdles Trump would face with the career Russian haters in Congress. The sanctions cannot be dealt with without resolving Crimea, the mythical Minsk Accords, and the U.S. and NATO regime change assault on Russia's borders. The makeup of Trump's administration could also undermine his verbal plans as Washington's hotels are filled with Bush-era neocons looking for, and one of them being the arch American Russia hater himself, John Bolton. Rudy Giuliani comes in second in the category, and if he gets the Justice Department, scary times could be ahead for us all. And he's still a shadow hanging over him concerning 9/11. 40% of the buyers may be still missing. And how come Giuliani could never answer that to the folks that We Are Change? We will see how much Mr. Trump is the man of the people before his swearing in, and he feels in his first tier team. All indications are now that he will not be draining the swamp, but joining it and going after opponents to be the goats for his cleaning up pledge. He is already backing off some of his campaign promises, and many expect him to subcontract the running of the government. He can enjoy being the front man, knowing that lending his image in his strength, even the major Russian politicians realize that we have to wait and see. Trump's picking Republican Party Chairman Reince Priebus for his chief of staff was understandable, as he needs a solid person to handle the powerful career politicians that he beats in the primaries. He will still have a love-hate relationship with most of them. They love it that he beat Hillary, but they hate that he beat them. Choosing former Breitbart Media Chairman Stephen Bannon as the strategic advisor has stirred up more controversy. Yes, successful campaign strategists are usually rewarded with a good job, but having him as his right arm is going to be a walking billboard for all the Democratic bad blood spilled in the feuds during the campaign. Trump will use them as his good cops, bad cops, while both Bannon and Previous had been in the running for a chief of staff for his gatekeeper power over access to the president. Previous has the sophistication skills critical for that job, which Mr. Rough and Tumble Bannon did not. But Trump made a point in showing he wanted them both to hopefully watch his flanks, as both the country and Mr. Trump are in uncharted waters with this presidency. If Trump begins the neocon gangsters in, brings the neocon gangsters in, they will do what they live to do. And having already done it to the country, they will rape and pillage it some more. They will require a screen of other nice things being done as a distraction. The mortgage bank collapse plus 9/11 with its subsequent multi-trillion in expenditures were years in the making. during the boom times of the 90s. Remember? All these gold-plated insiders who are contending for the top slots hid from the public during the primaries, a sign even a modestly competent intel analyst would have picked up on because they would have spoiled Trump's drain the swamp pitch being visible, but here they all are. Color me suspicious. And he is right. So, something we have to always examine. This is why I tell everyone out there you gotta remain vigilant, regardless. I tell to anyone, it doesn't matter if you support Donald Trump or not. Always remember, government means control of the mind in Latin. Let's go see, put their feet to the fire, because one thing for sure, we still got technology and the 10th Amendment. Don't hesitate. Carry on, my brothers and sisters. All right, this something came out interesting. I've been keeping a little track here about censorship for alleged fake news. For this one here, from Activist Post. And it says here, establishment media declares war on the competition as fake news. As it reads, the establishment media is dying. This is not a biased view coming from alternative media. It is, in fact, a borne out by metrics and opinion polls from within the establishment itself. It was true before the recent election and guaranteed to accelerate after their shameless defense of non-reality, which refused to accept any discontent among the American population with standard politics. Now, with egg on their face after a botched election coverage and wobbling uncertainty about how they can maintain multiple threads of a narrative so fundamentally disproven, they appear to be resorting to their nuclear option, a full shutdown of dissent. Voices within independent media have been chronicling the signposts toward full-on censorship as sites have encountered everything from excessive copyright infringement accusations to demonetization to the open admission by advertising giants that certain images would not be tolerated. However, until now, these efforts have appeared random, haphazard, rife with retractions and restorations of targeted sites and content. A massive backlash of reader outrage towards these restrictive measures has confirmed that most consumers do not like the idea of being given boundaries to their intellectual freedom. That said, there has to be a notable increase of hoax websites begin to populate the information stream. We can attest that there has been an incredible annoyance as we are bombarded daily with new outrageous claims and rabbit holes that readers accept us to sift through. Most times a cursory glance at the about page or any disclaimers quickly shows where this information is coming from. Other times a bit of common sense and discernment about why a site that has just appeared on the scene. Check Alexa for this info. Would have exclusive breaking content on the banner of an apparent local news channel or names that is a twisted version of a legitimate news outlet. But even with those caveats, we've all been taking it at one time or another and had to retract or update articles as necessary, or to apologize to our email list for sending out a given link. Sorry about that. This does jam up the works, but it is a tax we must all we all must pay if we believe in the free market of ideas and information. We're not perfect, but at least we have never been deliberately misleading like CNN and others often have been. The government recently legalized using propaganda against U.S. citizens. The wield, wield it of all their establishment media force to sell their lies. And now they're frustrated that people still prefer the truth as they see it naturally. This little device delivers turnkey internet privacy. Oops, sorry about that. As The Verge highlighted in a recent article, two-thirds of the world's internet users live under government censorship. Although this is roundly decried by establishment media as evidence of declining freedom, this is exactly the path we are heading toward at the behest of that same media within those areas that have managed to distort such a reality. The voices of the corporate media are making a show of calling Facebook to task for evidently not having stringent enough algorithms to discern legitimate news from deliberate hoax. We are being told that this is very likely led to the election of Trump and that this has become a major problem in need of a major solution. So these people believe that they are smarter than everyone else to say, you're a fraud, you're garbage, you're propaganda, we're going to censor you. The first shots are being fired as we speak. Yesterday, we learned that Facebook and Google would take swift action against fake news by demonetizing or banning them outright. Moving forward, we will restrict ad serving on pages that misrepresent, misstate, or conceal information about the publisher's content, or the primary purpose of the web property, a Google spokesman said in a statement given to Reuters. This policy includes fake news sites, the spokesperson confirmed. Google already prevents its AdSense program from being used by sites that promote violent videos and imagery, pornography, and hate speech. You can see the source yourself. This is problematic on a number of levels, not least of which it is vague notion of what constitutes violent imagery and hate speech. War, of course, is what should come first to mind when thinking of violence. People shootings and other clashes might qualify as well, but routinely populate the most mainstream of sources, and one person's hate speech is another person's dissent. The second component is that of transparency, where we see claims about any effort to conceal information about the publisher. Again, very vague, but as any journalist worth their salt knows, it is anonymity which leads to the truth more often than not, especially when threats against journalists and whistleblowers are demonstrably on the rise. Today, the mainstream media named as one of the top fake news sites to avoid. It's quite an honor. U.S. News link above has published a list of websites that deems unworthy of support and essentially urging to be demonetized or banned based on the previous calls to action. Here are several fake news sites that have become popular on Facebook and which should be avoided if you're looking for the facts. Of course, there's a few here on satire. It says here The Onion. Of course, they have a bunch of followers. But I'll just say this: the satires, The Onion, The Boris Report, that's which is a New Yorker, Duffel Blog, Newslo, Weekly World News, Chickhole. All right, there's a couple of hoaxes. It says here American News and DC Gazette, which they have a great amount of followers as well. And here's a list of propaganda: Activist Post, Before It's News, Daily Buzz Live, Disclosed TV, InfoWars, Natural News, Red Flag News, and World Truth TV. Well, huh? Firstly, the grouping of satire, hoax, and propaganda is troubling, as the definition of each aren't even remotely related to one another. Satire is literature and has a tradition of dating back thousands of years. It has been recognized as an essential component of intellectual and political freedom. A deliberate hoax, we can all agree, is lacking integrity, purposely deceptive, and it can be legitimately harmful or dangerous. Propaganda, though, is aligned with the state, and most commonly is directed and funded by the state. That this is a serious accusation and one that is entirely without merit for this website. It is also an especially ironic and dubious accusation coming from an outlet called U.S. News. Yet we're proud to be biased for peace, love, and liberty. Anyone against those principles is serving fake news as far as we're concerned. All of this is to say that we are entering dangerous new territory as the internet itself is under a new regime with the transfer to ICANN, an international body. If two-thirds of the globe is under digital dictatorship, what else is likely outcome from such international control over information? And you could thank your Lord and Savior, Barry Soetoro, which is also known as Barack Hussein Obama, who is an ultimate bend-over Bob to the New World Order as well. However, it is also an exhilarating time to be part of such mammoth upheaval, where the entrenched apparatus of the state itself has declared information to be its enemy and to acknowledge that it must do everything in its power to maintain its tenuous monopoly on the truth. The unfortunate reality for them is that the truth will always be more efficient and therefore simpler to decimate than the complexities of lies and true propaganda. The war on the internet, the war on journalism continues. But you know what? There's always countering that. And plus, there's other social media groups that are freedom friendly. Couple of them. Freedom's Network and Scene.life. Freedomsnetwork.com and SceneLife.com. No, Scene.life. Sorry about that. The whole thing's song and dance, my friends, because the reason for this, because the mainstream, big dinosaur media are getting their asses whipped in the information war, and they want to censor and can try to control it. But you know what? The truth of the matter is, it will backfire. Guarantee. I'm enjoying every minute of it. And you should too, and I am yawning. Wow. All right. Finally, this came out from Unicorn Riot. There's videos on here. It talks about, despite Army Corps statement, DAPL moves horizontal drill to Missouri River crossing. At approximately 3 a.m. November 16th, 2016, an independent media makers from Digital Smoke Signals spotted a horizontal drill. It's a highly militarized drill site next to the Missouri River, and there's a video for that. You can check it out yourselves. This slightly comes 2 days after the Army Corps statement made on November 14, 2016. The Army Corps alerted DAPL that construction on or the Corps' land bordering Lake Aho cannot occur because the Army has not made a final decision on where to grant an easement. The following day, November 15th, Unicorn Riot reporter spotted construction continuing despite the statement from the Army Corps. And there is things happening, and you can see them working on it. Absolutely. So they are working on it, my friends. Pretty despicable, right? Absolutely. That's how you gotta really look at that. So, of course, a lot of people aren't too thrilled, and I can't blame them. So they're working on that. And the response from the Dakota Access was to sue the Standing Rock Sioux tribe the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe and the Army Corps of Engineers claiming all permits were granted. Despite the Army Corps statement, the DAPL construction cannot continue. Dakota Access has moved in a horizontal drill and prepares to bore under the Missouri River at a highly fortified drill site. And, and you can see it. So the video is on there. And I will continue on. World protectors continue to gather in prayerful resistance at Aseti Sakoan against the Dakota Access Pipeline and prepare for the first winter storm of the season. So you can donate money to these guys, and they have a list of all the coverages below. So you can, folks can look it up yourselves from March through May to November 16th. So you can look at everything here. And it says here, no more stolen sisters, demonstration blockades, DAPL man camp, 25 plus arrest. So you can put that link on there and this and it has a big list of that, of everything on here. More deception continues, my friend. This is why I find it still infuriating on what's going on with the DAPL and the Missouri River. I am very distraught and pissed off, to be exact. It's completely unacceptable. If that thing happens, if a leak happens, what are those assholes got to say about it? Oh, we didn't know. We're sorry. They should just throw them in the river. They taste their own medicine of punishment. So there's a link for that on definitely for the No More Stolen Sisters. So you can check it out. And that is really it. I'm getting ready to fall asleep here, so sorry about that. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share this episode and plus the rest of my archives throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you want to send me something that's pretty interesting I may want to check out, whatever you do, I always recommend and beg, and I say that out of love, use send your correspondences with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, and Scene.life. Or you can email me at LokiLuck3. It's Loki Luck and the number 3 altogether at gmail.com. I'm not going to be playing any music, so I'm going to be hitting the sack. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading the love. May your guardian spirits be with you.